The Irrational Competence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Competence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is finally here. The 12-team playoff is upon us, and we are talking all of the first-round matchup games happening this weekend. I'm joined by my co-host, the man who volunteers at their gingerbread house. When they break their legs, he hands out candy canes. My co-host, Fresh. How you doing, buddy?
Playoffs.
We're
talking about playoffs?
We are talking about the playoffs.
Haps, I'm doing great. It is you know how amazing it is? We have 4 games on this weekend, and all of them have so many storylines, intrigue. You know, we've already gotten past man, this team should have been over this team. Like, we are into these matchups now. It's very, very similar to like that Sunday afternoon, Sunday night NCAA basketball tournament where everyone complains about who didn't get in. But then by Tuesday, everyone's like, all right, forget it. I'm worried about my first round matchup. How do I get to the Sweet 16, et cetera?
Right.
And these games all bring us that intrigue. Outside, look, the weather's obvious. It is going to be cold up north in 3 games. 60 degrees there in Austin, Texas, down in the 1 game in the south. Glued to the TVs across the board, and mixed in 2 NFL games on Saturday afternoon as well with the 3 playoff games. This is a smorgasbord of football, so sit back and enjoy as we head into the Christmas holiday.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. This is really going to be an entertaining weekend that we're going to have. It's all going to kick off on Friday night, though. I think that's the thing that I'm struggling the hardest to wrap my head around is that Friday night we get our first playoff game. Fresh, it's the Battle of the state of Indiana. The Hoosiers are traveling to South Bend, Indiana to face the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Right now, time of record, Notre Dame 7-point favorite, touchdown favorite in the game. Over-under is set at 51.5. That line is moving just a touch right now. I wouldn't be shocked to see that go a little bit higher here as well. Indiana, heck of a season out of them. And there's a bunch of people who can hate on Indiana. They can hate on their schedule. They can say everything they want to say. The Indiana Hoosiers played in a Power 4 conference, won every single game with the exception of 1 on their schedule. You can't ask a team to do anything more than that. And no one else on their bingo card had Indiana with a double-digit win season. We all thought they could be better, but we didn't. No one saw an 11-win season.
No, I mean, Signetti did an amazing job. And what he did at James Madison, it sort of show, like he always said, Google me and look at my stats. The dude wins. He coaches him up, gets him to play. I'm wondering how this team has learned coming in this week, though. You've had 3 weeks off by the time the game kicks off on Friday night, roughly, after your game versus Purdue. What have they learned from their experiences versus the Logos? What did they learn from their game versus Michigan, where they were steamrolling people up at that point, and at home against a pedestrian Michigan offense? They still allowed 15 points. They won the game 20-15, and then they got boat raced by the Buckeyes in Columbus. When they played the 2 Logo games at the end of the year, it looked like they were struggling at the line of scrimmage. They weren't able to sustain drives. They kind of were awestruck of the Logos. Hey, you see the winged helmet there from Michigan. You see the scarlet and gray come out for Ohio State. That's something that if you're not used to winning, you're still Indiana. And the players in wherever they came from, whether they came from James Madison, recruited, stayed at IU, came from other places through the portal, you still see those Logos who, as we all know, it's always been the big 2 and the little 8 or the big 2 and the little whatever number you want to keep adding on until Oregon arrived this past fall, that you have to get past that, that entry. And has this team shown growth, those little 2 experiences to be able to focus coming into playing another Logo in Notre Dame? And not just a Logo, an in-state rival, for lack of a better term. They are rivals. So there's Notre Dame fans and Indiana fans, especially from a basketball perspective, not really football, but you're still a rivalry within the state. There are people who hate each other. They're like, I'm Indiana, I'm true, to the core of the state. You're Notre Dame, whatever. Notre Dame's a world brand. You've got to go into now Notre Dame Stadium under touchdown Jesus on a Friday night and be able to focus in and put away all the noise. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot more Indiana fans in the state than people think of. Ticket prices right now are last I saw were like $400+ for the lowest, cheapest ticket. It's not unknown for Notre Dame fans to sell tickets, because we saw when Georgia came up there in 2017, that place was almost red. It being a Friday night might be at a disservice for Notre Dame fans because it is before the Christmas holiday. It means they're flying up either Friday afternoon or Thursday night. Who can take up the extra time before the Christmas holiday to get up there? Indiana fans, there might be more of them in the state, could drive. Stu, we already had this conversation on the last episode about school's out. How many students are actually coming back to South Bend? It's an international university. Kids are coming from all over the place. It's like a state university where everyone's home and they can drive that hour and a half or 2 hours back to campus. So who's going to fill that stadium? How's it going to be filled? I got a feeling we're going to have a lot of Indiana fans sitting in that stadium, making a difference and giving the Hoosiers a little extra boost when they might not normally have that in a normal regular season affair. So that really brings me to the game and how it's going to play out. Curtis Rourke, you've got to be laser focused and locked in. This is a pass-first football team for Indiana. You've got to be able to be right and ready to go because that Notre Dame defense is electric. They're going to give you a lot of different looks and a lot of different variations in the secondary. Very similar to what Michigan and Ohio State did. They're going to be physical at the line of scrimmage as well. You're not going to have as much time to throw the football. You're going to have to be decisive in your decision-making, whether it's hit the receiver in stride or get out of the pocket and throw the ball away. Taking a sack sometimes is actually an okay option compared to an interception, but play smart football. You can't go out there and just swing it and wheel it and deal it. You've got to be consistent with your passing attack and be smart with your decision-making, or the game will eventually unravel for you. The second key for Indiana in this ballgame is that offensive line. That Notre Dame defensive line and that front seven is ridiculously talented. You're going to have to be able to own that line of scrimmage, at least be competitive to give Rourke and Ellison, that running game, some time. You're not going to be able to score touchdowns in every drive. You're not playing Purdue this week. You're not playing Nebraska. You're going to have to be able to sometimes punting the football, matriculate, but don't give up the bad sack. Don't give up the strip sack. Don't enforce your quarterback into bad situations on third and long. Control the line of scrimmage. Allow the running game to be consistent. If you have a running game, it keeps you in the ballgame. It runs the clock, allows your defense to rest, and be able to 3-4 yards every single possession to build some first downs, build some momentum, and hopefully in the red zone find a way to punch it in and score a touchdown. If your offensive line, your quarterback play aren't locked in this ballgame, you're too awestruck by the environment and the expectation, you're going to get blown out of the dang building. And then lastly, on the defensive side for Indiana, you're playing a power football team. You have got to show what you did defensively versus Michigan and Ohio State. These two games are going right back to it. That Notre Dame offensive line, that running game between Riley Leonard off the quarterback situation and Jeremiah Love in the backfield, they're going to hit you from all angles. You've got to stand tall and tackle. Tackle. Yards after contact are eventually going to wear on you in this ball game. It's at night. It's going to be in the 20s, maybe even the teens. It's going to be cold. Yes, you're from Indiana, but this is a big-time ball game with adrenaline pumping. If you're getting worn on in the cold, even any kind of football game, you're just going to give up. You've got to be able to tackle on contact and stay in the football game, wrap up at the point of contact. Any ways that Notre Dame's just breaking down, they're going to start getting that 3 yards becomes 4, 4 becomes 5, 5 becomes 6. And they're eventually going to break a big-time game late in the second half. If you are not locking people down and getting off the field early. Tackle. Notre Dame's passing attack is not anything compared to the receivers that Ohio State has. So you have a situation there. They're a run-first football team that plays right into your linebackers, that plays right into your defensive linemen. Khalil and that linebacking core, you've got to be able to show up and tackle on contact. And lastly, if you try to pull off an upset, you've got to be able to get turnovers. If Riley Leonard throws you the ball, you've got to catch it. You've got to get those interceptions. You've got to force the fumbles. You've got to play with momentum that way. If they're going to give you a couple of it's a playoff game. Nerves can be pumping. You've got to make sure you take advantage of those opportunities. The other side, Notre Dame. The only Notre Dame image that everybody ever sees in big games, whether it's college football playoff or BCS national championship game or just a New Year's Six bowl game itself, is getting beat, laying down, not showing up in big games. It's been going on for a long time. Marcus Freeman, you have a chance to change the narrative. This is a chance at the high stage to get Notre Dame where they're going and to prove that you are the reason why, it's better. They're better off with you and not Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly at least got to the playoff. He got into BCS title games, never showed up in those games. You have a chance to really changing who Notre Dame football is and going out there and not just winning, but dominant fashion. Send a message to everybody else in the field, especially Georgia, who you have to play in the second round. Send a message to the Bulldogs that you're ready to come play physical football at an elite level defensively and offensively, and you're not going to have that indecisiveness or that pass hanging over your shoulder. Riley Leonard, big game for you. Do your thing. You don't have to be anything more. You don't have to be a Superman. Just control the offense, use your great running game, use your passing attack, Bo Collins on the perimeter, let your offensive line dictate and drive it away, be yourself, score touchdowns. Don't let the moment be too big. You're at home, you're probably going to have a majority crowd, but just control the environment the best you can. If there are Indiana fans there making it loud, just let it be. Handle your own business, get it done, guide the offense, you'll be just fine. But you have to play smart football. Do not give Indiana any life or any sense of hope. If you're not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, you're getting field goals, they're going to feel like they're in a football game. If you're throwing wide passes or playing with a little jittery, they're going to feel they're in the football game, and that momentum, that confidence will build. Right now, they're going to come out with fire in that first quarter. You've got to be able to match it and then beat them down in the second, third, and fourth quarters and get after that secondary for Indiana, which I do not believe is very strong. In Notre Dame defense, last thing, you guys have been monsters all year. Tackle, and get after Rourke. The receiving talent, they have some players. They have Ellison at running back. They have there's respect across the board. You've got to be aware for it. But if you tackle and you get that pass rush unleashed, he's going to throw you a couple passes. Take advantage of it. Use the exact same film, the exact same study that Ohio State did. That defense was lethal. Jack Storer and that entire Buckeye defense attacked and harassed Indiana all day long. You've got to have that same relentless pursuit against this Indiana football team, especially on their offense, to get yourself and lock it down. Do not take Indiana for granted. You are Notre Dame. Do what you do. You have recruited at a high level. You have playmakers across the board. Tackle and take advantage of the moment. It's going to be a nice spectacle. I'm actually surprised this was a night game. I thought they would probably have given Penn State, SMU the night game and give this more like a noon kickoff. Hey, they did it. You have the spotlight on you. Go out there and take care of business. In the end, I think Notre Dame wins by double digits. I think there's that line of scrimmage game, both sides. There's going to be too dominant. They're going to run the ball down Indiana's throat, and they're going to run away in the second half. I'm in high. Great season for Indiana, but I don't think they can match up with Notre Dame in this ballgame.
Fresh, how you win in the NFL in the playoffs?
Football and play defense.
Run the football and play defense. Games are won in the trenches. I think this is what we're going to start seeing. I think this is going to be a true difference maker in these first round matchup games. Is whichever team wins the rushing war, battle, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the team that comes out on top. Who do you trust to run the football a little bit more in this football game? And I trust Notre Dame. I trust Jeremiah Love, and I trust the front guys up there. Notre Dame has had one of the best offensive line in college football for the last 3 or 4 years. They've recruited those positions at a very high level. They have a great deal of depth over there. They have some young guys who have had some experience last year coming into this year. They have a couple veteran guys on that line as well that will kind of know what is expected of them, know what they want to do specifically in this football game. Indiana, I just can't see them matching up well on their defensive line. Now, if you go back and you turn on some of the tape that you talked about with Indiana, they like to shift that defensive line pretty late into the play clock, right before a quarterback calls hike, because they're trying to show a different type of look in there. I don't think that's going to be effective in this. How do you combat that? You run straight down their throat. I honestly think Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love are going to have anywhere from 45 to 50 rushing attempts combined in this football game. I don't think Riley Leonard throws the ball more than 22 times in this game. I just get that feeling that he's not going to be passing the ball almost at all, because I think Notre Dame is going to have that level of success against the Indiana front seven there. Indiana is going to be a different story. They're going to have to find matchups in the Notre Dame secondary that they're going to like. Xavier Watts is a stud safety over there. You have Kyle Hamilton a couple of years ago, came out of there. We talked about like how he was one of the best football players in college football that year. Really high first-round draft choice. Xavier Watt, kind of the same mold as him as well. Is he able to make a big play, or is Indiana able to avoid any big mistake? Because I think if they can be methodical, and they need to have, and again, Indiana needs to have 10, 12, 14 play drives. Eat up the clock here. Keep Notre Dame's offense off the field, because again, that's exactly what I think Notre Dame's game plan is. I just don't trust Indiana to be able to do this consistently, and especially for 4 quarters. I honestly think that Indiana will keep this game. I wouldn't be shocked if Indiana had even a small lead going into halftime. I think it's going to be really, really close in the first half. The difference is going to be running the football consistently, hitting the guys on the line over and over and over again. Just like you said, Fresh, those 3-yard gains turn to 5-yard gains. Those 5-yard gains turn to 8-yard gains. And all of a sudden, one of the Notre Dame players is going to bust out a big run and be the backbreaker against the Indiana Hoosiers. Amazing season by the Hoosiers. You are playing, in my eyes, Indiana's playing with house money. As much as they would love to win a national title, Indiana can walk away, even if they lose in the first round of this playoff, being like, we got there, we were there. Or, oh, you didn't deserve to be there. You lost in the first round. Doesn't matter. We were there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Fresh, I just can't see a really strong path. Indiana, if you're able to throw the ball for 300 plus yards on this Notre Dame defense, you got a shot to win this one. But I think Jeremiah Love's going to be way too much for Indiana to handle.
Yeah, it's just I think they had that. You've seen them all year. Yeah, people can say they still schedule. Well, Notre Dame's schedule is still better than Indiana's, and they boat raced everybody that they played.
Right.
There's a different kind of vibe about this Notre Dame team under Marcus Freeman. And even look at the past 2 years. This is year 3 of his administration, I'm going to call it. Year 1, they had the real offense. They struggled. They played Notre Dame. They played Ohio State tough in the first half up in Columbus. Last year, they played Ohio State really, really tough down there in South Bend. If it wasn't for a ball that should have been picked off, maybe they even beat Ohio State, and they absolutely destroyed Caleb Williams and USC. Those games, if under Brian Kelly, I don't think Brian Kelly's even competitive. It's a different vibe right now in South Bend, and I think that they're going to make sure that they prove their point on Friday night.
All right, Fresh, let's roll to the noon game that is on Saturday. The SMU Mustangs, they're going to travel up to Happy Valley, going to play the Penn State Nittany Lions. Both teams are 11-2 on the year. Time of record, we got Penn State. They're an 8.5-point favorite. Over-under is set at 53.5. Penn State, another feel-good story of the college football season. I jumped on this bandwagon early. I liked what SMU was doing. I thought SMU was kind of that team laying in the weeds, kind of waiting to jump out at people. There was a very, very talented football team. And again, I could care less what people say about, Alabama being deserving to be in over SMU. SMU got the spot. That's what matters the most. You can cry all you want, those big crocodile tears or elephant tears, whatever type they are. But as the Mustangs are in, Kevin Jennings, and I'm going to pose this one to you because, again, one, the Cinderella continued to dance on because I think SMU is Cinderella of this whole ball here. And interesting thing, does Kevin Jennings become a Heisman name if he has a solid showing against Penn State this weekend?
I would say if you could show up, if he could show up and put up some numbers, and not even in even if it's a losing effort, but puts in a valiant game where he's just showing out, and gains people's attention, I think he puts himself in that conversation for next year. But the pressure's on. There's no pressure in SMU really. No one expects it. Oh, it's gonna be snowing in Happy Valley. State College is gonna be drenched in white. It's a noon whiteout. Hey, and for all you have nothing. Just go out there and sling it and be smart. Now, there's a difference between smart and reckless. So if you're throwing, putting balls in spots and maybe Penn State defenders just make a great play, or they make a great last second coverage thing, that's one thing. If you're just throwing random passes to the guys wearing Penn State uniforms, that's the reckless between reckless and free. So just be smart, be within the offense. You're going to have to play some kind of hero ball at some point, but don't try to overvalue the moment and let the game become too big for you. And you've gotten here because you played so loose and free. You played emotionless football, and by that I mean you haven't really cared what anyone said. You just went there and got the job done. You won ball games. Nobody ever gave you a chance. Here, the spotlight's on you, and you didn't really show up in the first half versus Clemson. You made a great comeback late, but that first half you guys were non-existent. If that same effort happens, Penn State's just going to they're going to strangle you. it's going to be a suffocating rest of the ballgame because Singleton, Allen, and Alar and Tyler Warren is going to go boop, boop, boop down the field every single drive and eventually just put you away in a slow death mentality. You just got to come out there, learn from that lesson versus Clemson. Learn from the first half of being too hyped up and too energized. And I think we see this in ball games a lot where teams come in too fired up and you want to be ready to play, but you don't want to be so amped up that you're then, when the game starts, you're just all out of sorts. Deep breaths, focus on the moment. And the way that SMU is going to be able to focus on the moment is not Jennings. It's running the ball with Brashard Smith.
Right.
Maintain time possession, maintain down and distance. We talked about this in Indiana. If you're going to try to pull off the upset, you're going to have to run the ball up to the cold. That will then set up bubble screens. It will set up play action. It'll allow Jennings to have an outlet that he knows, we could run the football game. Our offensive line showed up. They're going to protect me. And if we have a running game, then the play action game kicks in and allows that Penn State defense to play on their heels instead of playing aggressively and coming downhill on you. It's going to be a daunting effort coming into that stadium, even if it's noon, because that Penn State fan base is going to be ready to rock and roll. You're going to have to be able to fight and maintain drives. By that right there means keeping your head and running the football and letting the passing game come to you. And at some point, using your legs more often. If you have the opportunity, run. Go get it. Make sure that you are getting first downs. And one thing's been irritating me, I'm just going to go a little mini side tangent. I was watching the NFL yesterday, and we got running, I got a quarterback scrambling out of the pocket. The first down market's there. They could go up 2 yards and get the first down. But they want to get a bigger play, and they go east-west, lateral to the first down marker to try to get around and get a block to get an 8-yard gain. Just get the first down. Just get the first down, folks. I don't care about the 10-yard run. Just get the first down, reset the chains, and move forward. That right there will keep you in solid position. If you're trying to make too big of a play, you're going to miss out on the first down. You're going to be punting the ball or fumbling it or throwing an interception, and you're going to be down in an avalanche of emotions going against you. Get the first downs. Play it simple football. We make it too complex sometimes. Be simple. Get the first down, get the 10 yards, and then build from there and reset. That's what SMU has got to do. Rhett Lashley in the offense, sometimes you're going to have a big play, take it, but maintain the down and distance, keep time possession, keep Tyler Warren that Penn State offense on the sideline. Defensively for SMU, you're going to have a big challenge. But the way you're going to have to be able to stop this Penn State offense, your linebackers are going to have to show up. Kobe Wilson, 100 tackles. Ahmad Walker, 82 tackles. They've combined for 3 picks, 3 forced fumbles, and 5 passes defense. The two of them are going to have their hands full with Singleton, Allen, Drew Alar, and Tyler Warren. But if those guys can show up, whether it's coverage in space, tackle in space, making plays off, in a pass rush situation, they can show up and make plays for the SMU defense. It's going to give them a chance. But they're going to have to be the ones who are going to make big plays on Saturday afternoon to keep them in the ballgame defensively. If they're making tackles, if they're getting hands on the football and knocking it down, or getting tackles and not allowing that yak that we talked about earlier, they're going to be at least keeping them and giving them a fighting chance. That secondary, there's not really much passing options for Penn State that truly that scare the crap out of me. They have receivers, but no one's going to be like, all right, that's a 5-star, that's an NFL receiver. You have that advantage. Let your safeties and defensive backs be smart, but tackle in space and let your linebackers flow and make the big play. Looking at Penn State, James Franklin, this is not a top 10 game, so you're fine. You don't have to worry about that. It's not a top 10 ball game. You're probably going to win. The top 10 boogeyman is not coming for you here, but it still is a big game. And I think if you lost to SMU at home in the playoff first round, that actually might be more detrimental to your career than your 1-18 record versus top 10 teams. You might actually be run out of town. You've got to show up and be aggressive. The second half that you had versus Oregon, that's what you need in this ball game for the entire full 60 minutes. Relentless pursuit of domination. Go out there, have no remorse for SMU, and take it to them. Run the football with Allen and Singleton. There's football games this year where we've seen they barely get a touch in the first half, and somehow Penn State's losing or tied. The Minnesota game comes to mind, and then it's like, oh, we got 2 great running backs. Let's give them the dang ball. And then before you know it, you're getting first downs, score touchdowns. Run the football. You don't have to overthink this thing. Tyler Warren, great tight end. I think that Fannin from Bowling Green is the best tight end in the country, but Warren, hey, you got the award. Congratulations. You're going to have mismatch problems with Warren and anyone that puts SMU up against him. Feed him the football. It's not very hard. Tight ends, running ball, let Alar make simple throws, wear him down with the offensive line, and get out of there. You don't have to do too much. Don't let the moment begin to become too big to you. If you start turning the football over and giving SMU a chance, you're in trouble. Just take care of business and move on to your next round of the playoff versus Boise State. Keep it simple and move forward. Penn State, I think, just has they recruited at a high level. They're too talented on the line of scrimmage. This game will get ugly fast in a hurry. SMU will come out in the first quarter, play fun, but I think that eventually the offensive line for Penn State, the defensive line for Penn State, Abdul Carter and those guys will eventually weigh on SMU a lot, and the discrepancy will eventually rise its ugly head. SMU will put up a valiant fight in the first quarter, but Penn State will roll after that.
Yeah, my question is, does SMU have a plan to neutralize Abdul Carter? And at Penn State fans right now are going, yeah, that's the only thing you're going to be able to do it with. Abdul Carter is a wrecking ball. This guy is arguably at least a top 10 draft pick this upcoming year in the first round. Some people, depending on which mock draft you're looking at right now, this kid's a top 5 talent in this year's upcoming NFL draft. Can you neutralize him? Kid's got 10 sacks on the year. If Jennings is running away from Carter this entire game, or if he's getting like 2-3 sacks in this football game, it is over. Like, this game is over. You know, SMU, great season. Head back to Ford Field down there in Dallas, Texas, and be happy with the season that you have, and regroup and roll this group back next year and run it again against the ACC. Penn State, for the first time in a long time, I'm going back and I watched an abbreviated version of the Oregon game with Penn State in the Big Ten title game. It's the first time in a long time that I was impressed with James Franklin's offense. This is the first time in a long time that I go, man, this offense is kind of really grinding it out. They're matching everything up with Oregon. I thought the defense played okay. It's really difficult, especially in a dome stadium, to slow down a team with the speed like the Oregon Ducks. But I thought Penn State kind of kept with them during this game. I don't know. I really don't know, because everything in the world screams Penn State in this football game. Nicholas Singleton needs to have a good 15, 20 touches in this game. Again, Allen's run the ball nicely, 4.8 yards a carry here right now, 6 touchdowns on the year. I've always thought Singleton was the better running back, though. And I don't know why he doesn't get more touches than Allen in this football game. That's the question that I have. Can James Franklin get out of his own way? He can walk into this game. He's got a game lined up for him that will win this football game. Penn State should win this football game unless Jennings and Smith just go off for SMU and just really break it down. Although, again, I'll throw this out here fresh. SMU's got 3 different wide receivers with over 30 catches on the year. Penn State's got a decent secondary, not elite, but very good. Are they able to handle Jennings' ability to kind of spread the football around and get it to different wide receivers? If SMU is able to do that, and again, I'm concerned if SMU jumped out to like a 14-0 lead in this game for some way, Penn State really may like kind of close and like collapse into themselves like a fading star. I don't think any of this is going to happen. I think Penn State's offensive line is much better than SMU's defensive line, and I think their ability to run the ball. And I'm going to say this: Abdul Carter will have at least 2 sacks in this football game, or he's going to have like a sack where he hits the quarterback and the quarterback's mid-throw and he grounds the ball into the turf. So, something along those lines. So I think he's going to be the difference maker in this football game. Give me Penn State. I'll say give me Penn State and the points in this football game.
You know, it's funny you brought up, spreading the ball around and testing that Penn State secondary. Oregon gave Rhett Lashley a pretty good blueprint. They threw the ball and they ran the ball.
Right.
Dylan Gabriel, the talent threshold of Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson and that entire, Oregon offense is a little step up from what SMU has, but they're still talented. And if they can use that same approach of run the football, bubble them out, put all the guys in there in space and really test them, that actually might slow down Abdul Carter in that front seven from getting after. But if you're going to have to be able to be elite on your throws and hit the guys in stride and make the right plays. This is going to, Jennings, is the moment too big for you? And we'll find out. But I think, you started off there. Is a chance to put himself on the Heisman spotlight and get himself in that conversation for next year. If he can show up and make some noise, I think that's definitely a good option and something that people remember on the back of their minds going into the summer and into the fall.
All right, Fresh, let's head over to our Saturday evening game, not the night game, the evening game at 4:00. The Clemson Tigers, they're going to travel down to Austin, Texas to face the Texas Longhorns. At time of record, the Longhorns are 11.5-point favorite. Over-under is set at 51.5 right now. I don't know about you. If Indiana pulls the upset on Notre Dame, I'll be big upset, but doesn't surprise me. SMU pulls the upset on Penn State. Little bit bigger of an upset, in my opinion, but again, kind of doesn't surprise me a little bit. Clemson pulls the upset on Texas. I'm shocked. Like, this is the game to me that I feel the most confident about. I feel like really, really confident in this Longhorns team. I don't know what it is about this Clemson team. I don't feel like I'm thoroughly impressed by them. I take a look at their 3 losses this year. Kick off the season, lost to Georgia, lost to Louisville at home, and lost to South Carolina. All 3 of those teams on par or better. Texas has on par or better talent than all 3 of those teams. And again,
I beg to differ because there's one team in that conversation that has beaten Texas twice.
On par is what I said.
All right.
On par or better. There's a difference there, Fresh. But looking at this Clemson team, I don't know if they can handle that. I don't know if they're going to be able to handle, if Klubnik's going to be able to play it. Phil Maffa, is he playing in this game? I know he got banged up a little bit in that ACC title game here. Are they going to be, what's his status for this? I think he's probably going to, if he can go, he's going to go in this one. But you take a look at what he did in that ACC title game, 13 carries, 28 yards, 2.2 yards a carry, and that's against the SMU run defense. This Longhorns run defense is way better, way
Pretty
more
good.
attacking defense. I don't know, Fresh. Is this just like a glorified yay for Dabo Swinney, you can feel good about yourself, Lottie freaking da, or does Clemson pose any threat to Texas?
Well, first off, it's going to pose a threat to my eyes watching that much orange on the field. That's like puke. It's terrible. That aside, Clemson, at any game in the playoffs, there's going to be threat. And I think, when it comes down to coaching, Dabo has proven he's a better coach than Sark in his career. We've seen Sark he beat Alabama, so has Dabo. Obviously, Dabo had much better quarterback play than when he won his games. But Dabo's been around, and for the fact that they're still here and they kept fighting, last year they won. They were down and out at 4-4, and then Tyler Spartanburg called in, and they were steamrolled through the rest of the year. Somehow as much as we want to despise Clemson football, he gets the players to play.
Right.
And I got to feel they're going to show up in the first quarter, first half. And we'll see how it plays out. And the reason why I think that this game will be competitive is because Cade Klubnik's actually played in the stadium before. He played Quinn Ewers in the Texas State playoffs in that stadium. They've been on the field before. He understands the moment. And Quinn Ewers himself hasn't been elite since the Oklahoma game, the Red River Shootout. You kind of look. In that next game, when he played Georgia, threw for 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, 2 fumbles lost, and was hit all night, including 6 sacks. Didn't look very good versus Arkansas. A&M, that physical defensive front, only threw for 218, touchdown, a pick, had 1 fumble lost. And then in the Dome, in the Benz versus Georgia this past week, sacked 6 more times, hit all night, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. He
threw for 358 still, but
well, I mean, but still was a lot. He has yards, but he still was getting popped, and that tells me one thing: he's holding the ball a lot, but also the offensive line has some issues. Kelvin Banks will probably be back to this ball game, but there's something. He hasn't been flawless in these ball games up to that point early in the year to Red River. He was making great throws, beating up on Michigan, beating up on Oklahoma, which actually has some decent defenses. But from there, it just hasn't been himself. There's been some offs from his approach.
Right.
How is he? Where's his mind going to be at? And is he going to have the moment too big? Is he going to come out, laser focused and hit receivers? Is Sark going to give the burden of the offense to the running game? Because that Texas offensive line can run, they can move people and you can run the football, making him feel more comfortable that way. I'm going to say I think they probably took the ball out of his hands versus A&M, and they tried to run the ball just to get out of there and win the football game because they weren't really confident in him finishing that ball game. But that is not a good sign with Arch Manning sitting on the sideline. And that brings me to my next point. I think we're going to see a lot of Arch in this football game because look what Lenore Sellers did to Clemson. Look what Jennings can do with his legs, and he was actually able to move the ball a little bit with his legs against Clemson. The mobile quarterback is what Clemson has struggled with. And if yours is really not got his game, you put Arch in there, it adds a whole new element where now you have quarterback reads, you have just complete boots, you have breakdown, contain, and looking for a receiver. He can just take it on his own and be able to convert a little bit more freely than Ewers is. He's a little more of an athlete. Is Ewers thinking too much late down the season to make big plays, and that's hindering the offense, and Arch is the better option. That's where I want to see how Sark develops that offense and gets them ready to play. Because the pressure right now is on Texas to show up because they have the talent. You mentioned it. That team is elite. They're 5-stars and blue chippers all across the board. You have Clemson. You have Arizona State. You have a solid pass to the Final Four. You have got to show up and get it done. And if yours is holding you back, you've got to make that decision to make the change and be the benefit of the bigger thing. The team is more important than the quarterback at this point. So make sure yours is focused and settled and use the running game to get them ready to go. It's going to be, I think that's the biggest thing that's weighing on the mind right now. You have loyalty. Yes, you want to be loyal to your quarterback, but the team is what you're supposed to be loyal to as a head coach and any kind of coach. So how does Ewers handle this moment coming into this game? Because the one thing that Clemson does have, they have a pretty solid defense. That front seven, they're going to hit you in the mouth. And I think
15 picks.
15 picks in the secondary. Front seven's legit. The solid linebackers. That's going to be a big factor in their favor. We talk about all the time. What travels? Defense and running game. Barrett Carter, Wade Woodaz, Sammy Brown linebackers, 3 solid linebackers who can tackle, who can cover tight ends, who can get after running backs and contain that, middle of the field. If they're active and tackle at point of contact, that's going to force now yours going to set us up in the pocket and try to push the ball down the field to a vertical passing game. Or does that lead to more, receivers, bubble screens, receiver sweeps, a lot more of underneath crossing patterns? How do you manipulate that Clemson defense? Eventually that pass rush is going to get home. They have some solid tackles. They have some solid ends. They can be able to get after you defensively. The Ewers is going to have to be sharp in this ball game. And if they're going to, slow down that pass rush, using the running game in a wiser, perspective, helping provide that more balance, you don't have to win by 1,000 points. You don't even have to cover the spread. You just got to win the game. And if Ewers is letting you down, or if he's not focused and making the right throws, you've got to make the move to Arch. Because this defense for Clemson is not going to let up. They saw what Georgia has done. They saw what A&M had done at the line of scrimmage, that front seven right now. Dabo, maybe go have a couple of players change their name this week. Have one of your corners change his name to Dalen Everett and give him a number 6 jersey. Have one of your players change his name to Jalen Walker and give him a number 11 jersey and let him, come after Ewers. Because right now, when he's played Georgia and the guys with those names, he hasn't been too good. But you've got to use that game film. How do you attack? Yes, they threw for 358. They only scored 1 touchdown, and that was on a coverage breakdown, a missed tackle in the secondary. And after that, they struggled in the red zone. They couldn't get off the field, and they couldn't protect the quarterback. The script is there for both these teams. Sark, how do you adjust from the flaws you have and identify them and make them happen against a solid physical defense? And Dabo, how do you let your defense get relentless and come after? And that brings us to the very end. Cade Klubnik. We've seen some very terrible Cade Klubnik in his career, and we've seen some pretty good Cade Klubnik. Use your legs, make the smart throws. If Mathon's not there in the running game, you've got to be the running game. but don't try to do too much. You're back home in Austin, Texas. You're from Austin, Texas. Don't try to let the moment be too big on this homecoming. Just keep your offense on the field. You've had comebacks and you've shown you'll be able to do it, but make the smart read. Do not try to be Superman, because if you do, Anthony Hill and that entire defense from Barron, Macumba, et cetera, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, that Texas defense will eat you alive. There is speed on that defense. They will hunt you down. You've got to be smart with the way you address this offense and move the ball. I set it for Texas. I'll say it for you. You don't have to win by 1,000 points. You just got to win by 1. Make this an ugly, muck it up game. Let your defense come in there, lock it down, maintain time possession, get some first downs, find a way to score a touchdown or two, but make it ugly and just try to survive the environment. It's going to be hostile. Those Texas fans are fired up. You've just got to let the moments be pushed away for a moment and just focus on one play at a time, one play at a time, one play at a time. Don't let the homecoming, don't let that thought of playing in the stadium in the past be too big for you, and help try to guide Clemson and keep them in the ballgame. Your defense will show up. Will you show up and let the moment come to you and become a playmaker who can control the environment? If you can, it'll be a special day for the Clemson Tigers. The one thing I also kind of want to see is Garrett Riley. We were supposed to hear how great this offense was going to be when he came to Clemson, and in big games, generally haven't seen it. How do you adjust your play calling to get this offense to fully function and be able to attack this Texas defense? I'm going to look at your offensive play calling right now, because we've seen your brother kind of flamed out there at USC, and your luster, what you did at TCU a couple of years ago, it's not looking too good. Like we aren't seeing the 500-yard passing games and the 50 tons of points. What we're seeing is Cade Klubnik running the ball a lot and using his legs. How do you use the passing game to manipulate this Texas secondary and try to take some shots down the field and challenge them? You mentioned it. You're the 12th seed. You got nothing to lose. Just push the ball every once in a while. Try to be aggressive when you have it, but don't be too unorthodox and risky to kill yourself through the ball game. But give me something in this ball game. In the end, Texas is just too big. They're too strong. They're gonna put it to them pretty good. And I think Dabo will be hanging around for about a half, and eventually that Texas offense and the Texas defense will wear him down the second half and pull away. Dabo, I will never doubt him. I've seen crazy things happen, but I just think Texas, from a depth chart perspective, and that loss to Georgia is going to have them hungry and ready to go.
Again, I'm going with this. Longhorns, the defense is what impressed me, especially in the SEC title game. I thought that defense was much more fired up than the first time that they met with Georgia, and they were much more aggressive. The difference that we saw with the Texas defense, and again, something that Georgia struggled with in the SEC title game, was holding on to the football. Now, they recovered a couple of their own fumbles on it, but how many times did you see Texas players bringing their hands and trying to punch out the football? I don't know if Clemson's offensive line can handle guys like Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill Jr. Those two kids remind me of I got a feeling that those two kids will be some of the best linebackers in this generation of college football. They're monsters out there in that defense as well. They get a lot of things opened up with that Texas defensive line that's got some big hogs in the middle there. They're going to open up that A gap and some of the outside blitzes there. They'll allow them to get after Cade Klubnik. Klubnik's taken 20 sacks in the year. Although Clemson's forced 15 interceptions, Texas has got 19 on them. Again, I just can't see, especially if they're Don Moffitt. I don't think Clemson has the offensive firepower to even match point for point with the Texas Longhorns, especially against this Texas defense. I just don't see it with them. Again, if we're talking about Scatabo, we're talking about Arizona State meeting them in the next round. You have a guy like Scatabo who is just a monster there, and you can kind of play off of him. It's a different story. You can do a lot of misdirections. You can do a lot of things where you're, faking it one way and going a different way with him. Again, though, I just don't see that with the Tigers. They don't have a marquee wide receiver that I want to go, okay, this guy could really dominate. Antonio Williams, 71 catches on the year, 800 plus yards, 10 touchdowns. I've never been like, he was at South Carolina. He's at South Carolina. He was good, but you take a look. He went for 13 and 149, and then 5 and 72 against Pitt and the Citadel. I mean, 4 of his 10 touchdowns came against those two teams. He's had some nice games. 8 catches, 99 yards against South Carolina. But again, let him have a couple of catches. Let him have his catches, but we're not going to let you completely beat us. He would have to have a huge game for Clemson for me to feel like, okay, this is a team that can pull off this upset. I think Texas is too much power for them, especially on the defensive end. I really don't think Texas is going to need to score anything more than 21 points in this game. If Clemson can cross that 21-point threshold against this Texas defense, call me impressed. I think that this is a win. But I do think Clemson has the most to lose in this football game. I think they have the most to lose in the entire playoff. Well, I take that back. Second most to lose in this entire playoff. We'll get to that here in a second. But the reason I'm saying this is last time Clemson won a national title was quite a while ago. They've missed the playoffs, and they're time and time again, there's more and more questions coming up about Dabo. Is he able to handle this day and age? Yeah, Dabo is a really solid coach. 90% of the programs in America would take him and take his record each and every year. The problem is that, again, we talked about this later about setting expectations. Clemson's expectation is a national title or competing for a spot in the national title game. And those days I feel like are gone. You play in the ACC, you're not competitive when you go up against the SEC teams. I mean, Clemson, you're a nice story, and I got a feeling you're going to be a nice program that a lot of fan bases would take. A lot of fan bases would take Clemson's record each and every year and a shot to get in the playoff. But again, if your expectation is competing for national titles and stuff like that, you got some work to do there. I don't know. Give me Texas and the points in this game, though, Fresh. I feel like Texas is a lock.
I mean, this is you can see that Sark made the change from the first Georgia game to the second one, and I can see him making the adjustments over this 2-week period to get ready for Clemson. The only way Clemson stays in this ballgame is if that defense just comes out and plays like their hair on fire and forces a couple early turnovers, very similar to that October 19th Georgia affair where they just shock it on early and they build a lead and the defense can just hold on. But I don't see that coming. I think, it's a lot. It's a massive challenge for them to handle. And another thing I mentioned earlier, can Quinn Ewers get out of his own way and make some big boy throws?
Right. All right, Fresh, let's go to the last of our first round playoff games. This one is Saturday night. It's at 8 o'clock. The Tennessee Volunteers 10-2 on the year. They're going to travel to Columbus, Ohio to face the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're 10-2 on the year. Ohio State at time of record is a 7-point favorite. Over-under is set at 47.5. Fresh, I told you off air, and I kind of previewed this in the previous game here of talking about Clemson, Texas. I think Ohio State probably is the team that has the most to lose in this college football playoff, especially in this first-round matchup against Tennessee. It could really be if Ohio State does not walk off the field in Columbus victorious on Saturday night, it could be a very, very long offseason for Buckeye fans. I think that it could be a lot of changes. Remember, you still get, even though if the portal is closed, whenever your seasons end, you get 72 hours to decide whether or not you want to jump in the portal after the season gets over. There's already some guys for Ohio State jumping in there. I know every program in the country has guys jumping into the portal. But again, going into this football game here, Fresh, I told you again off air, I think the first thing for Ohio State, losing Josh Simmons against Oregon, left tackle. Okay, move some things around. You can handle that. Seth McLaughlin, starting center for the Buckeyes, the Alabama transfer, losing him, I think, decimated the offensive line. And I think this is where we're starting to see when you have injuries on the front of your offensive line, this is where the transfer portal starts to hurt programs. Is the elite level programs throughout the country do not have the same level of depth on their offensive line as maybe they have had in years past. You've had kids that wind up heading out of your program. And Tennessee's got the ability to rush the passer and give Will Howard all sorts of fits. That's what makes me very, very nervous in this football game. And I think that Ohio State and Ryan Day also kind of wish this game was in Knoxville.
Oh, no doubt. Allegedly, and it's funny you bring up again, they wish the game was in Knoxville because I think Herb Street mentioned it, and you kind of think about it like, gosh, it's probably not a bad idea or not a bad thought. Is if Ohio State comes out in the first quarter and that offense looks like it did against Michigan or really struggling, and this is games at home, those fans are start booing. And it's going to turn into a complete road environment because now your own fan base is, I'm going to say, hostile against you because you're not playing up expectations. Plus, the opposing fans in the stadium are there causing some havoc. I mean, it goes back to it. How many Ohio State students are going to show up for this football game and be on campus? According to rumors that are flying and all over social media, volunteer fans are finding very unique ways all over the place to buy up tickets for this ball game. Even coming to the point where I think it was the Ohio State athletic director told Ohio State fans, do not even try to sell your tickets because you can't trust anybody that they're actually Buckeye fans. The whole nation travels hard, and they are been begging for a playoff game, just getting in and getting back to the football team back to 1998 standard, early 2000s. If that stadium becomes a hostile environment toward the Buckeyes in both ways because the offense is struggling, they're getting booed by their own, plus volunteer fans there, that is a that's a nuclear option. That is a bad situation for Ohio State. That means this offense has got to come out and be focused. Will Howard, be locked in. Offensive line. How can we develop this offense, Chip Kelly, to help that offensive line be exposed? Help your tackles, help your guards, help Will Howard. Where do you look at? Jeremiah Smith's going to get a lot of attention, but you have Ibuka, you have Cardinal Tate, Enos. The depth of receiver is spectacular. You have Judkins. You have Henderson in the backfield. How do you get your playmakers involved and save your offensive line, or at least protect your offensive line at the same time? Quick release of the football is the key, or running the ball downhill. Offensive linemen, you ask any of them, they prefer to run block over pass block. And that means getting aggressive at the point of the line of scrimmage, at the snap, and getting after it and hitting the helmet in front of them and driving them off the dang football. And letting the running backs find the hole and scoot and go from there. That's how you let the offensive line build confidence and then develop the pass rush from there. It also helps with play action and slows down that pass rush if the running game is successful. Run the football. Now, but don't become too obsessed with running the ball. Like versus Michigan, there was opportunities in that Michigan secondary, Will Johnson not being there, and you did not try to take shots all afternoon. You try to be too physical. You try to be too obsessed with the running game. You need the running game to give you balance, but you've also to come back to your strength, and that's the passing game. Will Howard needs the protection. You run the football, allow the play action, slow down the pass rush, and then use that to layer on the passing attack. You have got to come out aggressive. Now, the one thing that gives me hope for Ohio State in this football game is a couple of years ago, Ohio State lost to Michigan. They went down to the Peach Bowl to take on that Georgia football team coming off a national championship. And C.J. Stroud and company gave Georgia everything they could handle, and it came down to a kicker from 40-plus yards out, bad placement, bad handle, and the ball went wide left. But they almost took down Georgia and went to go play for national title. They played TCU, they would have beat the trash out of them too. There's that same Ohio State mentality come into this football game, where that last lingering memory is Michigan planting a flag on your own stadium. You come back out 3 weeks later versus Tennessee. How do you redeem yourself? Is everybody playing with their piss hot and their hair on fire and ready to hit somebody wearing orange across from them? You've got to be focused. You talk about Ohio State in depth. Ohio State, they groom linemen. They develop linemen. They've been doing it for years. If you're playing Ohio State and playing offensive line, you should be ready to go out there and strap it up and get after somebody. Will Howard, you came to Ohio State for the moment. You need to show up and show everybody that you're actually worth it. And Ryan Day, if he's thinking it up, you've got to have the guts to pull him and play somebody else if you have the option. It's a win or go home mentality from here on out, folks. And I think that maybe that desperation is what helps Ohio State, is that you have no other. If you lose, it's over. You got to keep playing. Jeremiah Smith should be seeing the football early and on. Judkins should be seeing the football early and often. Henderson should be seeing the football early and often. Abuka seeing the football early and often. Getting all those guys touches in that first quarter, getting them active in the football game so they don't get checked out. Because you know what happens? Sometimes we see it in the NFL all the time. When your star player doesn't get the ball in the first 2 drives, they get irritated, they become divas, and they get checked out, and it causes too much drama on the sideline and allows little things to become big things. If you get guys to football early, you start building some positive momentum, you put the fear in the defense that they're all getting involved, and now they have to start defending 3 or 4 or 5 different guys. That's where you start layering on and become more successful. There's a black cloud hanging over that Buckeye football team, and you have to be able to just take a chip away, and be able to get positive momentum. Defensively, you guys have been lights out. That entire defense has been fantastic all year. Jack Sawyer being a leader. I expect them to come ready to play. This game being at home, this game being a physical war in the trenches with Tennessee's offensive line being very physical too, it's going to be a fun one to watch. But can the Buckeyes force some turnovers and shorten the field? How do you actually help your offense that's struggling right now? We didn't really see them forcing Michigan turnovers and shortening the field deep in Michigan territory and giving them, the offense consistent opportunities for a short field to put points to the board. Everybody gets some stops. They only gave up, 13 points, but Michigan had some sustained drives. Come out there, be aggressive, pop the ball up, wrap up, and be Ohio State. Embrace the moment, embrace the desperation that you have in this football game. Ryan Day, don't coach scared. Don't coach scared. If you're scared for your job, the game's already over and you lost. Go out there and just be the coach that you are versus Northwestern, versus Purdue, versus, I'll just say versus Penn State, where you have confidence that you can get the job done. Go out there and play loose and play relentless football. If you go out here and you beat Tennessee, you get a rematch with Oregon where you lost by a point and you get it in the Rose Bowl where Ohio State is very, very comfortable at. It's probably going to be a 50-50 spread in fan base. You have a chance to control your own destiny. Don't play scared. If you do, you're probably going to get fired or you're going to be out 1 year in a one and done situation. Just go out there and take care of business. Look at Tennessee. It's one of the most ridiculous fan bases I've ever witnessed in my entire life. I'm a Georgia fan. We get all their crap 24/7. But you know what? They back it up. They will support their team 24/7. They will come after you. And if they're in that stadium on Saturday night, they can become difference makers with the noise and the havoc they can create. If they lose, it's going to be painful to listen to. And if they beat Ohio State, it's going to be even worse to listen to. Either way, it's going to be an event for the Volunteers. They've been begging for their football team to be respectable and elite since 2003, 2004, maybe. This is an opportunity. Will the team actually live up to it? Nico's had some struggles all year. They had a rough game down there versus Arkansas. They should have lost to Florida. The passing game, it kind of got us some glimmers versus Vanderbilt the last week of the year, but we haven't seen that fully ready to go. And we sure as heck haven't seen Nico go on the road outside of the game when he went down to Athens and actually do something productive. He didn't do anything down there in Athens. He didn't do anything in Arkansas. On the road for Tennessee football under Josh Heupel isn't very good at all. How does that continue in Ohio State? Does he let the moment become too big and get overwhelmed? He didn't look too comfortable in the second half versus the Dogs. Didn't really hit some big throws. Wasn't really fully functioning there. Didn't show up versus Arkansas. It's something that's going to linger. It's a moment too big for Nico. And the only way you make that moment not too big for him is you run Dylan Sampson and use that Tennessee offensive line and you keep the ball game in front of you. You give Nico some easy throws on the road. If you start putting him out there in 3 and 4 or 5 receiver sets and expect him to start slinging around, it's going to be a bad outcome for Tennessee. Use Dylan Sampson, use the running game, ease Nico into the game. Because so far, road experiences under Josh Heupel aren't very good. That defense travels. That defense is vastly improved over the previous years for the Volunteers. James Pierce, I think he's getting a lot more double teams, and they've been running away from him. He doesn't have as many sacks, but him being on the field and having those difference, becoming a difference maker that way is letting everybody else being freed up and making plays. when it comes down to it, he's going to have to show up pass rush wise to slow down that passing attack for Ohio State. And how does that Tennessee secondary hold up against the four receivers I listed earlier that could really become very detrimental to their success? This is an interesting scenario for both these football teams. You mentioned Ohio State has the most to lose. Tennessee has a lot on the line too. We've been, the expectations have been extremely high for them. The fan base is holding to them. Can they show up and actually play in a football game and be competitive in a big environment? Can they play 4 quarters versus Ohio State? They played 2.5 versus Georgia this past year in Athens. But can they play 4 versus Ohio State and give them a run for their money? And they're going to have to start fast. You can't have a slow start versus the Buckeyes because that team, I got feelings, is going to come out on fire. Nico, don't try to do too much. You try to start playing hero ball, we're going to start seeing interceptions that were inexplicable like they were versus Alabama late when you came back in, and you threw a ball that should have been thrown away in the stands right to an Alabama player. Do not let the moment get too big. Play within the system. Josh Heupel, protect your quarterback. I know this is not what you want to do in a playoff game, but you've got to protect your quarterback through the running game with your smart, simple throws. He's still a redshirt freshman. It's going to be a hostile environment. Let the game come to him. Do not put him in a spot where you're down 2 touchdowns and it's 3rd and long, and he's having to sort of go against that relentless Ohio State defense, or it could be a long night for the Volunteers. I think this is going to be an absolute affair. I think this is going to be a defensive struggle. We are not going to see a lot of points. I think both defenses are going to show up, and I kind of actually think both quarterbacks are going to have up and down moments in this football game. There's a lot of pressure on both of them. Running games will be very, profound from both sides. I think Ohio State wins 24-20 on a late game-winning drive by Will Howard. He's going to redeem himself from the Oregon game and come out and put together a winning drive to get the victory for Ohio State and push them on. But it'll be a defensive battle all night long. Cold weather, nasty conditions. Maybe some overcast, humid. I don't think there's snow, but it's going to be chilly. Run the football, contain it, get after it. Tennessee will show up and play football, but Ohio State will eventually win the ball game in the end. It'll be a classic, game we'll remember for years to come.
I think it's going to come down to, can Ohio State stop the run? If Dylan Sampson gets going for the Volunteers, it could be a long evening for Ohio State, and especially that defense. It comes down to it. Fresh. I want to see who Tennessee is going to match up on Jeremiah Smith. You have the best wide receiver in college football. And again, Travis Hunter won the Heisman and stuff like that. Jeremiah Smith is just a freak. Dude's different than anyone else out there. Again, give him a year or 2, let him grow into his body a little bit more, and this guy's going to just be absolutely unstoppable. It's going to be a cheat code. Toss it up to him. And if they're going to double him and put a safety over the top of it, then you're just going to let Ibuka just run in motion, get going, because he's one of the fastest players on your team here. And again, Carnell Tate, you take a look at what he's done the second half of the season. Great job out of him. Who is Tennessee going to match up with those 3 wide receivers? And is Ohio State going to have enough time to get him the football? Are they going to be able to contain Pierce's pass rush in this football game? If Will Howard is getting knocked down time and time again, that goes back to the point where this offensive line, for some reason or another, just can't survive the injuries that they've had. Fresh, a couple weeks ago, I told you, I asked you if you'd ever pick against your own team. You said, no, you won't pick against your own team. For some reason, then you decided that the Taliban was going to learn to play football. And I got way more questions about that one. But I've spent a lot of time on this football game. I don't feel great, but I am going to take the Buckeyes in this game. I don't feel great in this game. I don't feel great because of the offense. And again, offensive line injuries scare the crap out of me, because we spent this entire episode talking about the significance about being able to win in the trenches. And that's where Ohio State has the weakness. They have the they have the advantage in quarterback play, running back. I would say it's even between having Henderson, Judkins to Sampson, and then definitely have the advantage on the wide receiver side. The only place I don't feel confident that Ohio State has an advantage is where I feel like it matters the most, and that's the offensive line. I'll take Ohio State in this game. I'll pick my favorite team here just because I'll keep it with you, and if they lose, then we're going to have a really long off season. I'll probably only talk to you and our producer Drew Fresh for about 3 months or 4 months or maybe a year even.
I've actually never picked against the Buckeyes on this podcast in our 4 years now.
Yes, you have.
Outside of playing Georgia, I've never picked against the Buckeyes.
There you go. Never picked except one time. So I don't know, Fresh. I think Ohio State's got a lot to lose in this football game. I think Tennessee, again, yeah, they do have a little bit to lose, but man, I hope that Ohio State's not playing tight. I'd love to see the Buckeyes put up two scores real quick on Tennessee, like get up 14-0, kind of get the ball rolling, force Nico to beat you, and not take the ball kind of out of Sampson's hands.
I mean, young quarterback play.
Right.
Look, if you look it up, Josh Heupel on the road with Tennessee is terrible. And Nico didn't look good at Oklahoma, didn't look good in Athens versus the Dogs, and did not look good at Arkansas. That right there is a worrisome moment if I'm a Tennessee fan. And that's why Jalen Sampson's got to be involved early and often. Because that passing attack for Tennessee on the road, even in previous years under Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, didn't produce dividends in terms of wins. And that's got to be something that they need to break. Josh Heupel on the road with Tennessee is a black cloud there. And then Ohio State versus the SEC is a black cloud because Ohio State is 1-13 in the last 14 games versus the SEC. So both these teams have trends that are coming in this game and a lot of pressure on these two, profile programs to show up on Saturday night and deliver.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. This whole first round of the playoff is going to be a blast. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, because get notified every single time we drop a new episode, because we're going to be with you all bowl season long. We'll do a couple more bowl games as well. Man, Fresh, I can't believe we're finally here to the first round of the 12-team playoff. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Make sure you're checking out SpinnableSports.com because the Irrational Competence Podcast is part of SpinnableSports.com. Interact with us on the social medias. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Leave us that 5-star review because you guys know we're those 2 5-star prospects. That's all I got, Fresh. Let's lock in and enjoy these games here.
Everybody, a lot of football coming up this weekend. Hope you all enjoy it. Embrace the playoffs. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, a lot of exciting moments, very, very intense down the stretch in all these games. Hit us up at SpinnableSports.com. Hit us up on Spinnable Sports on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, spread the word. And if we don't hear from you between now and then, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all y'all, and safe and fun with your families. And with that, we'll talk to you later. Bye, y'all.